Welcome again to this third part of the professional podcasting series, a guide based on a couple of years of podcasting experience. My name is Markus Völter. I'm an independent consultant on software architecture, DSLs and MDSD and product lines. If you're not in software, you probably don't know what this means, so just forget it. You can reach me through völter.de or via völter@acm.org. So, and again, this experience is based almost 3 years of software engineering radio, the premier podcast in software engineering at sd-radio.net. So, in this third part, I want to talk about production, publishing, music, and some legal stuff. So we'll start with mastering and encoding. First of all, before you export the MP3, you should make sure that everything has more or less the same recording level. It's extremely annoying if while listening to a podcast, you have volume changes all the time. You know, it gets low and you have to turn up your volume and then it becomes loud again and your ear ache. So you should make it the same level. You can use the compressor feature in tools like Audition or Audacity, or you can use the Levelator from the Conversations Network, which levels a whole like MP3 on a specific level. If you do intermediate music, you might want to do it a little bit quieter than the regular talking because it is perceived to be a little bit louder. So it's okay if in your mixing, you know, in the waveform, the music is a little bit lower than the talking. Also, unless you're doing a music podcast, always mix mono. It's only half of the size and it's absolutely good enough for talk and the occasional music. Encodings, typically for podcasts, you would use a 64 kbps mix. If you want to do high quality podcast, I do that in SE Radio. You do 128 kilobit per second. Of course, it means the file size is doubled. And if you want to do high-end music podcasts, you might want to think about 256 kbps, but most music podcasts are still on 128. And of course, the sample rate should be 44,100. That's the standard. Some devices can't cope with any other one. And then, of course, you want to make sure that you set the MP3 tags, including the cover image, right? MP3 tags is author, title, album, year, all that kind of stuff. You should also put the abstract of your podcast into the MP3 comment field. And of course, the cover image is important because that's what's shown on the MP3 player and stuff while your podcast is played. Next thing, I want to talk about licensing a little bit. Obviously, you have to define a license for your podcast. People have to know how they can use it, and you should not try to come up with your own license because, I mean, you probably have to be a lawyer to come up with a good one and a meaningful one, and that's way too hard. And so a good place to start is Creative Commons, creativecommons.org. They define a bunch of licenses. You can customize your own license for your own work. You can specify whether it should be, you know, whether people should be able to, reuse this stuff non-commercially, whether they should be allowed to change things, whether they have to attribute you or not. And through this wizard, you can like set those various properties and then you get a license. And the good thing is the license is understandable for humans, for non-lawyers, and there is also a legal speak version that is really formally legally binding, and they have it available for all kinds of legislations worldwide, and so it's a very good starting point. Of course, it's mostly for non-commercial stuff. If you want to do commercial stuff, you basically use different licenses that I don't want to talk about here. Next thing, music and stuff. Every good podcast needs music, at least some kind of intro and outro stuff. And maybe you even want to play music in your podcast as part of your podcast. And of course, unless you know what you're doing, stay away from commercial music. There is all those problems with licensing fees, RIAA in Germany, it's the GEMA, right? The whatever it means. And it's extremely tough to find out how you can play commercial music legally. So alternatively, you can go to non-commercial music. There is the Creative Commons website has a page, Legal Music for Videos or Audio, where they link to all kinds of music sources. There is the PodSafe Music Network initiated by Adam Curry at music.podshow.com. They have a lot of good music that you can use by just basically for free. You just have to, attribute them and say that you're using and you know, increment a counter and stuff. There's also podsafeaudio.com. I haven't used that, so I can't say much about it. For jingles and stuff, if you want your own jingles, there are 2 web pages I would like to recommend. There is New Media Creative. They can help you create jingles. And there is the Jeff Smith, who does specific music composition for podcasts and stuff. And actually, it's at least the second guy has quite fair pricing. So I really recommend using this stuff. Then if you want to use music for intros and stuff, there is a category of music that's called production music. It's license-free music you can use in your own productions. That's where the name comes from. And you have to pay a fixed download fee, like, I don't know, 30 euros, 40 euros. And then you can use it in your publications. You know, you can't publish it to millions of people, but most people don't. So the licenses change or depend on the various sites. And the next slide has some of them. But it's really a good starting point, and it's much... You know, you don't have to count how many people exactly listen, and you don't have to pay royalties based on the number of people. And also they have a lot of good instrumental stuff, which is very useful for emotion-specific music or for intro and outro. Also, often you can get several variants, cuts, and loops for a given song. So that's very good if you want to have a background music, you know, that runs for various lengths of time. Just take one of those loops and stick them together and together and together, and then you have a stinger for the end to finish it off. So very good stuff. Here are a couple of web pages that have production music. I've used the first 3. I haven't used the other ones. But you might want to take a look at those and get the music there. Some even support searching based on the kind of instrumentation you want, or, you know, the emotion. You want sad music or energetic music. You can search based on those criteria. Finally, a couple of words about distribution. I guess most people know that, but I wanted to include it for completeness. Where do you host this stuff? Well, the problem is, of course, that you can run into relatively high amounts of bandwidth cost, because I mean your files are big, and if you get a couple of thousands of listeners, you still have download bandwidth you know, volumes in the gigabytes. So if you, for example, go to libsyn.com, that's where I have my stuff. You have a blogging engine, although it's not very nice. You might want to set up your own I don't know, WordPress, Podpress blog and then link to Libsyn. But anyway, they have unlimited bandwidth. They give you 250 megabytes each month again. So each month you get another 250 megabytes for, you know, like additional podcast episodes. And this is for $10 a month. You can get 100 megabytes for $5, and there is bigger variants too. And they, you know, you can just upload and upload and upload. Of course, there are caveats. One is that after a month, you cannot change the old stuff. So it's archived. It's basically read-only, but you can never change it. And of course, you have to pay forever. If you don't pay anymore, they take everything down. They are not necessarily always the fastest download, and sometimes they have availability issues, but it's still a really good price value for your money. And of course, you have to register your stuff with all the mainstream podcast directories, you know, Podcast 411, Podcast Pickle, Podcast LA, iTunes, of course, Podcast Directory, Tech Podcasts. And then if you're you know, I don't know, German or French podcast, you have to register things with the respective language directories. And of course, the most important one is the iTunes Store. Well, that finishes off this episode, and it also finishes off the series. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any feedback, you contact me at felter@acm.org, VOELTER@acm.org. Thanks for watching.